Hello, I'm Teresa Crabtree, and I'm the creator of the SoulCleanse, which is a powerful method of releasing non-beneficial energies and dark entities. And welcome to part 2 of Demonology, a biblical perspective. If you haven't watched part 1, I highly suggest that you do that first, because in part 1 I do an overview of everything we're going to be talking about, and then we also talk about the terms that are used in the Old Testament. Where today we're going to start with the terms that are used in the New Testament. Now, this document here you can download for free. That's 38 pages. It has everything that we're going to be talking about and some other context, comments, and all of that, so that you know the context that the scriptures were used in. And I highly suggest that you download that so that you can follow along with the videos. Also, you can use it for your own personal use, share it with others. And then also, if you print it out, then you can write your notes right on there. So to get to that, you can, there's a link in the description. There should be a link in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube. And if not, you can go to my website at teresacrabtree.com. And down on the bottom, there's a link that says Demonology, a Biblical Perspective. Click on that, and then you'll take you to my Bible studies page, and there you'll be able to download it right there. And then also you can see what other videos that I've already done. So let's get started. So as I said, we started with an introduction on part 1. So I'm not going to go over all that. I'll just hit some of the highlights. So the Old Testament was originally written in the Hebrew and Aramaic languages, where the New Testament was written in Greek. So in part 1, I talk about the ones from the Old Testament, the terms and the words that we use that were translated from Hebrew. And today we're going to go over the ones that were translated in Greek from the New Testament, and there is an overlap with some of them. Now the definitions, I talked about this in my last video, so I'll just go over this kind of quick. You'll figure it out as we go. The definitions are separated into 2 main sections. First, the Old Testament, and then the New Testament. And then within each of these groups, I put them all in alphabetical order. And then each word is followed with a transliteration from the original language. That means how we pronounce it in English. And then in parentheses is the phonetic spelling. And then next I talk about the word origin and the meaning, and then followed by a brief summary of the word usage and the cultural and historical background of the word. And the definitions rely heavily from Strong's Concordance. Now, for each of the words that we're going to be studying, I also will look down here, like here is Beelzeboul. This is an Old Testament one, but I also include the Bible, the actual scripture where this is found for the words that are related to our specific study of demonology. So after the definitions, then we'll be going into the actual Bible verses and doing some study on what these mean. But having this up here is really good, so you can kind of go back and forth with some of these words, because there's going to be some that you've probably never heard of before. And so let's get started. Now, the Old Testament ones, I already went through this, and I will share something that I pointed out in video 1. Excuse me. With the Old Testament Hebrew definitions, there's only 7 of them right here. There's only 7. Yet the ones that we're going to study today, the New Testament from the Greek words, there's 21. So it's talked about, demonology is talked about a lot more in the New Testament than it is in the Old Testament. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here too. All right, so here's the Bible. This is the Old Testament. See how big it is? And see how thin the New Testament is? So this whole Old Testament, there's only 7 words that I found that are related to demonology, whereas in this little small section, there's 21 different terms that are used. So it's talked about a lot more. And we're going to talk about the intertestament times of when between the 2 testaments were written, and some of the reasons why it is this way. All right, so let's jump right in here. We got 21 of these to look at. I'm not going to be going into big depth with them. I'm going to just kind of hit them, because hopefully you'll download or print this information yourself, and then you'll have it right there. What's really nice, if you download it into the PDF form, there's a search engine. So if you're reading through these and studying, you can easily just put in one word, like abyss, the first word up here. You can put in abyss in the word search, and it will bring up every place that word is used in the document. So it's really handy to have it. All right, so the abyss. This word means, all of these are all written originally in the Greek language, and they've been in an older Greek language than we use even today, and then translated into English. So the abyss means without depth or bottomless. If you think of, like, if there's an earthquake or a huge crater in the earth, not even a crater, a crevice, and deep, so deep you look down, you can't see the bottom of it. That's the idea of the abyss. It's the bottom, not even the whole abyss. It's not even the whole crevice itself, but it's down there in the bottom. And in Jewish apocalyptic literature, now apocalyptic literature means these are things that are related to the Bible. They could be history books, but they aren't in the Bible itself. So in the Jewish apocalyptic literature, the abyss is is depicted as a temporary place of imprisonment for demonic forces until the final judgment. And if you've ever worked with me, this is where I send the demons. When I can get them off, they go into the abyss and they're held there. It's sort of like putting them in jail so they can't hurt anybody else while they're waiting for the court date for their judgment. And we know there's demons in there. The Bible tells us that. And then we're going to learn about it later. Satan's going to be bound at the end times. He's going to be bound there for 1,000 years. So things on earth are going to be a lot better when Satan and his demons aren't out here doing so much havoc that they're doing now. But then they're allowed to come out for a little while, and that's the end times. You hear about Armageddon, that's where that happens. So we'll be talking a little bit more about all of that. And that'll be probably in the last of the video series. And these are the places where they're found, mostly in Revelation and then one in Luke. Then there's the word accuser. The concept of an accuser also has a spiritual implication. We know what human accusers mean, but also spiritual, is seen in the role of Satan as the accuser in Jewish and Christian theology. He accuses things against God. He accuses people about this. He's known as a liar, accuser, deceit. And these two terms, Apollyon and Abaddon, these are distinct from any pagan deity and is specifically identified as an angel of destruction unleashed during the end times. Although it sounds like Apollo, the Greek Apollo, but this is something totally different. And it's only found once in Revelation 9, 1 through 11. And we have two we're going to kind of look at the same time. The same word is used for beast, and beast usually it means like an animal, a creature of some sort, a living animal. And in the beast of the earth, in the Revelation and the end time prophecies, this is going to be the false prophet. We're going to learn about that. I have a whole section down below in the Revelation end times prophecies. It talks all about the beast of the earth as a false prophet, and the beast from the sea is the Antichrist. These two work together at the end times. They're going to cause a lot of havoc, and it's already happening. And for the beast of the sea, this beast is described, and its symbology is decoded by the Old Testament prophet Daniel. Now, Daniel was a prophet who wrote 600 years before the book of Revelation was even written. And then when John wrote the book of Revelation, they're both having visions, and they're both awake when they're having the visions. An angel and Jesus is leading them through these visions, 600 years apart, and they're both describing the same beast. So something's going on here. Ooh, got goose pimples on that one. He's not a nice guy. And there's Beelzeboul. I'm not going to talk much about this because I already talked about him in the first video, the Hebrew equivalent of Beelzebub. So it's you'll find it under Beelzebub in the Old Testament ones. And the use of this name in the gospel highlights the tension between Jesus and the religious leaders who accused him of being in league with Beelzeboul. And Beelzeboul is considered to be like Satan, the devil. So when Jesus says this stuff, they say, "Oh, you're from the devil." And you'll learn more about that. That will show up in several of these scriptures right here. And Belial is a Hebrew word which means worthlessness or wickedness. In the Old Testament, the term is used to describe individuals or actions that are morally corrupt or rebellious against God. And out of the 27 times it shows up in the Old Testament, the King James Version translates it 16 times as children or sons of Belial, personifying Belial as though he is an actual person. But only the King James does it. I don't think any of the other English translations do it that way. Most is translated, the term is corrupt or wicked men. Now, in the Greek equivalent, is also associated with the word is with anomia, which means lawlessness or iniquity. And of the 27 times anomia is used in the New Testament, none of them are translated as a proper name. So, how did Belial come to be translated as a proper name in the King James Version? How does it come to be somebody's name? I have a real hard time seeing this because they have it covered. So the term Belial is rooted in the Jewish apocalyptic literature, where it's often used to describe the forces of evil opposing God. In the intertestamental period, in between when the Old Testament was written and the New Testament was written, some of the Jewish writings began to personify, instead of saying, oh, it's a devil, it's saying that the devil's name is Belial. So, and this happens quite a bit. And terms like Belial then become associated with Satan and demonic forces. And this reflects a cultural understanding of a cosmic battle between good and evil. And this theme is prevalent right from the beginning in the book of Genesis all the way to the end of the Bible. That's the whole story is about the battle that we're in. It's a spiritual battle between good and evil. And in the New Testament, there's only one usage of the word Belial, and it's used as a proper name of a specific being who's in contrast to Christ. And that's in 2 Corinthians 6. You can read that and you'll see what I'm talking about. Next is the Deceiver. And that word comes from the root word meaning a wanderer or straying. And the word is planeo from Greek. In the New Testament, planeo is frequently used to warn against human false prophets, teachers, and deceptive practices that could lead believers away from the teachings of Jesus Christ. But for our study, I'm only focusing on the ones that are using the word as deceiving spirits. And those, again, are all found in Revelation. A lot of the demon talk, as you'll see already, is in Revelation, and a lot of that's symbology. But we're also told through different prophets and what a lot of this symbology actually means. And a lot of it's coming true. So it's a pretty fascinating study in itself. All right, our next word is demon. It comes from the Greek word daimonia, meaning a deity or a spirit. In the Greco-Roman world, now, when Jesus was alive and at the time that these were written, the Greek Empire had already been wiped out and the Romans were in charge. And so a lot of their cultures were being put onto the people that they overtook. So a lot of these beliefs are important to understand when you're studying the Bible, the New Testament. So in the Greco-Roman world, daemons were considered lesser deities or spirits that could be either benevolent or malevolent. Things could be good or bad. However, in the Jewish and the early Christian context, the word took on a more negative connotation, referring specifically to evil spirits that were in rebellion against God. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of them. The word demon in the New Testament is used quite a bit. And then you can also compare it to the word demon, in the Hebrew word demon in the Old Testament. It's only used twice there. And both of those times it's related to adultery. In fact, I talked about this in the first video, most of the evil that's talked about in the Old Testament refers to idolatry. There were hundreds of scriptures relating to adultery and God trying to get his people to not do that, not to go there, because he knew the dangers. When you're calling in a false god, these are really demons that you're calling in, and God knows it's going to pull you right back. It's Satan. You can't follow God and you can follow Satan as well. So demon possessed is used in the New Testament to describe individuals who are possessed or significantly influenced by demons, often resulting in physical and mental afflictions. And casting out demons was a significant part of Jesus' ministry. He came here for three main reasons. We wanted to get the demons under control, take authority over them, and healing and also mainly to lead people to God. His whole gospel, the way, the truth, and life, is to get people to go back to God and to try to warn them about the demons and to help people. So it's very important. That's why it's talked about so much, and demon possession. And in a later video, we're going to be talking about a lot of the miracles that he did when he cast out demons. And then you'll see the direct correlation. A lot of them, as soon as the demons were gone, the physical and the mental ailments were gone too. Total instant healing, because it was all induced by demons. And it's still going on today. That's my work. Just trying to get people to not be influenced by them. All right, our next one here is devil, and that comes from the Greek word diabolos, and that means to slander or to accuse. And the ancient Jews recognized Satan as an accuser who was in opposition to God. That's the battle, the whole battle. The early Christian community also understood Satan as a real being who seeks to destroy their allegiance and reliance to God. That's his whole job. His whole agenda is to pull us away from God. Anything that is not leading you to God, the creator God, the real God, is demonic. Then you have to be careful, because they're sneaky. The word dragon comes from Archon, meaning to see or to look at. So it suggests a creature with a piercing gaze. Yeah. All right, I talked about that earlier, so I'm going to skip all that. And in the New Testament, the term is primarily used in the end time scripture again to convey the power and malevolence of Satan and his opposition to God and his people. So it shows up quite a few times, the dragon. There's also a section down below that talks about Leviathan and Behemoth. These are terms from the Old Testament, and they'll be in another video, third or fourth video. We'll be talking more about them. And they also relate to serpent and dragon. They all kind of intertwine. Sometimes it's being symbolic, sometimes being a person, symbolizing a specific person. The enemy, we all know what enemies are. Well, the New Testament expands on our understanding of human enemies to also include spiritual enemies, particularly in the context of the struggle between good and bad. So that shows up several times here in all of these passages. Then there's evil spirits, paneros. This one shows up quite a bit, and it means to toil or to work hard, which I thought was an interesting term for evil spirits. I guess they're working hard, and it's often with the connotation of pain and trouble and chaos. In the New Testament, it's often translated as wicked or evil. In the Jewish context, paneros aligns with the Hebrew understanding of evil as anything that opposes God's will and righteousness. So for our study, I focus just on the scriptures that are referring to the spiritual battle between good and evil, especially the influence of Satan and his followers, and these are on here. So it shows up quite a bit, the word evil spirits. Then there's Exorcist. Try to get up here without it jumping too fast on me. Now, this is interesting. The word exorcist, which you've probably heard, means to urgently ask or to bind by an oath. And when I read that, I thought it was interesting, because when I do my work as an exorcist, that's exactly what I do. I urgently ask Jesus and my SoulCleanse team to help. And the first thing we do is we bind the demons. And you could think of the metaphor, if you're a robber and you go into somebody's house and there's 5 people and you're just one, and you want to rob their house and rifle through everything, that's the first thing you're going to do. You're going to tie everybody up. You're going to bind them. And that's what we do with the demons as well. So when I saw that was the actual meaning of the word, I thought that was interesting. So in the ancient world, exorcism was a common practice across various cultures and religions. The Jewish exorcists were known to use incantations and rituals to drive out demons. So the practice was not unique to Christianity, but early Christians believed that the authority of Jesus' name was uniquely powerful in casting out demons. And this belief is rooted in the understanding that Jesus has divine authority over the demonic realms. So they were witnessing it, especially the apostles and the disciples. They were casting out demons too. Jesus taught them how to do it. And when they did it in Jesus' name, wow. And when they were aligned with Jesus, they were doing it. And we talked about in a video the other day, we'll talk about it in a future video too. But if you don't know what you're doing, you haven't been trained, don't try to knock demons out of people. There's a Bible story about the 7 sons of Sceva. They tried to do that and it went bad. The demon beat them all up, left him running around the house beat up and naked. So you probably don't want that to happen. All right, so the next one is God of this age. That's just one of the names or titles that is given to Satan. It's found only one time in 2 Corinthians. And if you read and study the Bible, you'll find that Paul, one of the apostles, he wrote most of these letters, these epistles, and he uses coins a lot of words that aren't normally used or anywhere else. So a lot of times they're found only one place, and he's usually the author of it, because that guy was really smart, and he knew a lot. All right, the next word we're going to look at for a moment is prince and ruler. And the word is Archon, and it means to rule or to begin. And Archon is used in the New Testament to denote a person who holds a place of authority and governance. So it could be a physical ruler, a king, a governor, a chief, anything like that. But for our study, I only included those that make references to demonic spirits, where they're talking about the demons being a prince or a ruler. There is a hierarchy, just like in our world here, we have different, depending on what country you live in. You have a president or you have a dictator or whatever, but there's always an authority. In the business, you got the top dog and you've got the different hierarchy. The same thing is true in the demonic realm. So I only included all of these that I included just have to do with the demonic realm, because there's a lot of others. Excuse me, it talks about human rulers, so it's totally different. All right, Satan. Satan is found in the Old Testament. It's called Satan. That's how they pronounced it. And in the Greek, they call it Satanas. And it means adversary or accuser in both words. And in the Jewish and early Christian thought, Satan is understood to be the ruler of the fallen angels, demons, who rebelled against God. And in the Old Testament, the term Satan is used to describe both humans and supernatural adversaries. In the New Testament, however, Satanus refers to Satan as a name, usually as his proper name. And it's used to refer to Satan, the chief adversary of God and humanity. So Satan is depicted as a personal being who opposes God's purpose and seeks to lead people away from the truth. I just kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier, that in the Old Testament, it was more about evil. And then in the intertestament time, some of these apocalyptic literature, all this other stuff was coming in, and some of that was adopted. And then by the time we get to the New Testament, we're talking more about, okay, it's not just a theme, it's just not evil people. It's actually, there is a certain person named Satan. So Satan is associated with evil, temptation, deception, and spiritual warfare. Then we'll look at serpent. Serpent, the root word means a face or an eye, and it's possibly alluding to the serpent's appearance or its watchful nature. When you look at a serpent, first thing that you catch is that dart and tongue coming out, but you're out hit the eyes. You just can't miss those. And they watch. If you ever have a snake cornered or you're getting near him and he feels your vibration, first thing you do, he's going to sit, get very still, and he's keeping his eye on you, whether or not you've seen him yet. So that's probably where that came from. And in the New Testament, it means serpent or a snake, but also an artfully malicious person, somebody who's very cunning and sneaky. And it often symbolizes deceit, danger, evil, as well as healing. And we see that on the caduceus, the snakes. That's been around for a long time. That came from the Greeks too, maybe even earlier. So serpents were seen as creatures that were cunning and wise. And in the biblical context, the serpent is most famously associated with the temptation of Eve in the Garden of Eden. And that's in the beginning of the Bible there in Genesis. And it's depicted as a crafty creature that leads humanity into rebellion against God. And this imagery carries into the New Testament, where the serpent is often a metaphor for Satan, demonic forces, or evil influences, especially within the context of temptation and sin. And we'll learn more about that the Garden of Eden one thing I was just going to mention that I thought was interesting, and we'll talk about that in probably the next video. But it says in the Bible that when the serpent came to Eve and deceived her, his punishment was that he was going to be on his belly for the rest of his life, which means if God's making this serpent go into on his belly, that means before this happened, the serpent would have been something that walked or flew. How it crawls. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Give you a little sneak peek into some of the things we'll discover in the upcoming videos, or you can sneak peek it yourself if you've downloaded it and you can read these. All right, our next word is the Tempter. In the Jewish tradition, testing by God was understood as a way to refine and purify faith. There's a lot of instances where some of these people are going through tremendous trials and tribulation and all, and God allows it because he's wanting them to clear out the old stuff, stop what they're doing, pay attention to him, and get back on track. So sometimes that can happen in our lives too, when we think, and you probably have times in your life when you had something that went wrong, but then hindsight, you're like, well, I'm glad that did happen because that helped me to do this or make this change or whatnot. So the bad stuff isn't always bad. But Satan that's not his goal when he's trying to tempt us. He's trying to get us off track. So God was understood as the testing by God was understood as a way to refine and purify faith. And that's seen in a lot of the different stories. And two of the main ones are Abraham and Job, especially Job. He went through everything. But in a negative sense, it can refer to Satan or evil forces that are tempting individuals to rebel against God. And for our study, those are the ones that I focused on here in Matthew, Mark, and these others. And then our last one for today is unclean spirit. In the Greco-Roman and Jewish cultures, the term akathartos carried connotations of moral impurity, often associated with idolatry and pagan practices. And in Jewish culture, the concept of cleanliness was deeply embedded in the law of Moses, which outlined various stringent regulations for maintaining ritual purity. If you ever look through the book of Leviticus, that whole book, Leviticus means law, and it's all the different laws on it. To wash their hands, how they do this to this animal, kill it this way, clean it this way. It was very stringent about being clean and pure. So the term, when coupled with pneuma, which means wind or breath, where we get the word pneumonia from, when those two are put together, it's often translated as an unclean, impure spirit or evil spirits. And this shows up quite a bit. So on our next video, we're going to start off talking about the angelic rebellion against God and then the human rebellion, and might even be able to get into the Lucifer section. So I do hope you come back. I hope you enjoyed this and that you're learning some things. And again, share it with others. And if you enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe so you'll know when my new next video comes out, and share it with others. Comment below. If there are other terms that you know related to demonology that I didn't cover, let me know. Put it down in the comments or go to my website and let me know. And I'll add them to this document here. All right, so I hope you do well. Just say namaste and namaste. Hope to see you in the next video.